So we're now at the choose stage of the model. So you've done exercises for the current state and you've done exercises for vision for the future. And those things were all in your workbook. And remember, you've ended up with a jumble of 50 plus things, and then you've ended up then distilling it down to maybe 5 or 10 must-have items. Now, the next question is, what on earth do you do with that list? And how do you normally make decisions? And typically, everybody makes decisions differently. So maybe before you go any further, it's worth reminding yourself, it's worth spending some time thinking, how do I normally make decisions? You know, when you bought a car, when you bought your house, you know, how did you choose to go into medicine? How do you choose where to live? You know, think of big decisions that you've made. Where do you go on holiday? How do you make those kind of decisions? And just spend some time reflecting on the bigger picture behind that. You know, how did you decide what you did? Now, you might find that the decisions that you made were purely brain-based, cognitive, so analytical. So you spend your time analysing it, you created spreadsheet, lists of pros and cons, and then the decision has arisen from that. Or you might find the decisions were all heart-based. You know, it was something that you saw, you fell in love, somebody else went there, you saw a beautiful picture, and that just attracted you, and you went with your gut instinct, Nothing wrong with either of those two different things. You know, they both tap into different bits of ourselves, but it's useful to know how you normally make decisions. Actually, it's probably quite useful to examine decisions from both aspects, because if you are somebody who tends to make decisions on a very cognitive basis, then the danger with that is that you can get paralyzed. You know, you lose track of the kind of stuff that actually your heart desires, because you spend all your time being logical and analytical, and you get paralyzed by trying to make decisions. And of course, that then becomes quite challenging. The advantage, of course, is you can say, yes, I did well and truly analyze the decision. I really thought about it. So, you know, that's the good side. But the downside is that you might lose of the things that your heart really desires, and you get paralyzed in decision analysis. The flip side is, if you tend to make decisions from your heart, you know, if you go with your gut instinct, for example, then the decision making often is quite quick. But the downside is that you might not have actually spent any real time thinking about the consequences of what you're doing. So yes, you know, it's good to make a decision, it's good to be quick, but the question then is, have you really thought it all out? So when it comes to decision making, I would suggest that you actually try and approach it with both modes. So, you know, if I'm making a brain decision, how would I go about it? If I'm making a heart decision, how would I go about it? What's my brain telling me? What's my heart telling me? So look at both. So here might be some brain-based decision making. So you produce a list of forces for and against, or you create a list of possible options and you rank it against the criteria. So if you think in terms of career decision making, in the previous two stages, you've produced a list of maybe between 5 or 10 criteria of things that you absolutely must have in your future career. And those 5 or 10 criteria, you know, they would go into a list of how you choose your options. Now, if you have already in your mind a list of future careers, then you can use that 5 to 10 items to help you make that decision. If you are starting your career journey and you think, well, okay, you know, I now know what I want, but I have no ideas which jobs I want to have, then the first thing that you need to do is you need to do some brainstorming to create your options A, B, and C. And typically brainstorming would go along the lines of, well, these are the 5 to 10 things that I want to have. Which possible careers would meet some of those 5 to 10 things that I want to have? And often it's useful to go to people around you. So, you know, you go to your friends and family, your colleagues, and you say, you know, I've done exercises in the current state and the vision stage of the program, and here's the list of 5 to 10 things that I want to have. Can you suggest some careers that would meet some of these 5 to 10 items that I want to have? So you do brainstorming, show those 5 to 10 things that you want to have to people around you, and ask them to suggest some possible careers. And then that's a way that you and people around you can brainstorm and you can create options for the future. If you already have an idea, then of course you don't need to do that. But what you're doing now is you're marrying those 5 to 10 things that you want to have, and you're comparing them against potential versions for the future, whether that's something you already knew or whether that's something that has been newly created through brainstorming. And then you use those 5 to 10 ideal things that you want to rank the different options. Now, you could also use a very simple shortcut. You can say, is what I'm going to do, is it paid? And do you love doing it? And of course, if it's paid and you love doing it, then, it's a no-brainer, do it. If it's something that's not paid and you don't particularly like doing it, then, don't go there. Why would you? Yeah. But you might find stuff that you love doing it, but it's not paid. And if that's the case, you could do it just for the love of it, or maybe it'll add to your portfolio. And there might be things that are paid, but you don't particularly like doing it. And again, you might do that if you need the money, or it might be something that's useful for your portfolio. When you're making career decisions, I often find that there's a tension between what I want today and what I want in the long term. And you won't be surprised to hear that often, there'll be two very, very different ways forward. There'll be a way forward which will be around focusing, this is what I want today, this is what I want tomorrow. And there'll be a very different path if you focus on where you want to be, in 10 or 20 years' time. And again, I don't think that either option is right or wrong. Everybody's different, and you're going to know what is the right way forward for you. So my personal suggestion would be that you probably need a little bit of both. Because if you just focus on your career today, I want to have a really good time today, and tomorrow I want to really enjoy my life, that's fine. I guess the question that I would have is, what's going to happen in 10 years' time? The world will have changed, you will have changed, and in 10 years' time, will you look back on what you're doing at the moment and think, okay, yes, I had a lovely time, but did I actually do anything to invest in my future? And I know that sort of this might be a generational difference here as well. In terms of how much people focus on the future versus how much people focus on the present. I think if you just focus on the present, my worry would be that, in 10 years' time, you're going to realize that you are no different and no further ahead to where you are at the moment. And that might be problematic because you might regret some of the decisions that you've made. Yeah. Equally, focusing on 10 years from now, that's not good either. Because if all the time you're thinking this is where I want to be in 10 years' time, and then you totally forget to enjoy the present moment, then, that's problematic also. Because instead of enjoying and instead of learning, see, we're back to growth mindset. Instead of learning and enjoying stuff as you're going along, all the time you're sacrificing and putting some of your needs aside in the service of something that's going to happen in the future. And you might find that you end up being so miserable and burnt out that the future never arrives. Yeah. So for me, I would say that actually you need both of them. You need a focus on today and you need a focus on the long term. And in practical terms, one way that you can do that, you can kind of think about dialing up and down different bits of your life and career at different times. So for example, looking at the top dials, there will be times where actually, clinical work's not that important. You do a bit of work on your portfolio, but you really focus on your hobbies and your family. Yeah, because that's what's important to me at the moment, and I don't need to do that much for my career. But there will be other times where actually, my clinical career and my portfolio is really important. I've got exams coming up, I've got to apply for the next stage of my career. And, you might recognize that actually, for the next 2 to 3 months, the family aspects, they're going to have to take a little bit of a back seat. Yeah. So, and I find, this kind of concept useful because it allows you to focus on the long term as well as on the short term. Yeah, it recognizes you can't necessarily do both at the same time, but it allows you to dial up and down different bits of your life, every few weeks or every few months. Yeah, so you're not just focused on your career for 10 years, nor are you just focused on your hobbies for 10 years. But, sort of there'll be a couple of months when one's more important, and then they might swap over. And hopefully that'll achieve the kind of balance that will focus on investing for your long-term career success, but at the same time will be something that you enjoy the present moment, and it means that you're not burning out by simply sacrificing yourself all the time in the interest of the future. The thing is that wherever you end up in your career, you are likely to find that there are going to be difficult times. And there's a skill in converting the difficult times into pleasant times. And the kind of things that can help you with that would be knowing your values, would be some of that long-term thinking, would be having a balance in your life, and also the relationships. And when it comes to career today versus career in the long term, in my experiences, what I've seen, there's lots and lots of people that always want to take the easy route. And, that's fine. I get it. We all like an easy life. Yeah. The challenge there is that, if you are somebody who's looking for a fairly easy life, who's looking for a straightforward career, then, one of the things that I've seen in my career related discussions, there's lots and lots of people that are pursuing exactly the same things. So if there is an easy option, if there is an easy life, that's going to be quite busy. The competition is going to be great because everybody else is going to want to do that. So weirdly, the best way to achieve a career that gives you an easy life, paradoxically, is to work really hard so that you position yourself so that you are the person that gets the job interview, so that you are a person that gets selected. So it's a bit weird because the way that you get an easy life is you work really hard, which means that then you are brilliantly positioned in order to end up with that easy life or an easy career in the long term. So it's kind of a bit paradoxical, yeah. And if you're somebody who's happy to do hard work, then you're probably going to find that there's not going to be anywhere near as much competition, if you're willing to work hard. And, maybe there's sort of sunshine at the end of the road because, if you are working hard, then you're investing in the future. And at the end of that, you'll have something to show for it. There'll be some achievement and you're going to be in a good position to pick and choose and, and be a desirable candidate so that you can get the kind of jobs that you want. And that might include some of the easier jobs, yeah. So again, I'm not suggesting that you just spend all your time focusing on the future. Remember, I think it needs to be a bit of both. There needs to be a little bit of present time enjoyment. There needs to be balance in the present moment as well as a focus in the future. That would be my suggestion. But I would caution against somebody who thinks, I want something that's straightforward, that's easy, because you're probably going to find that you have to work quite hard in order to actually get that and achieve it, because there's going to be an awful lot of competition and an awful lot of other people are going to be wanting and chasing exactly the same easy life. So think about having a balance. Yeah. Part of the issue when it comes to predicting where the future is going to be, or when it comes to making career decisions, is a recognition that actually here you are sitting today making decision based on what you're like today with the knowledge that you have today about the future. And the reality is that in the future you'll be different, your circumstances will be different, and it might be something as obvious as family related, but there might also be health related stuff or geography related stuff. Our clinical practice is constantly changing. How our careers are structured, the organizations that we work with, all of that is changing. Who knows what healthcare system is going to be like in 10, let alone in 20 years' time. And the problem that we have is that we're making career decisions today based on what we know, but the reality is that you can't possibly know everything about a particular career even today. And even if you could know everything about a particular option today, by the time 10 years comes, that'll be something completely different. Yeah. So that always is a challenge when it comes to making career decision. We're trying to predict the future, and yet we will change, the world will change, and we can't possibly know everything about a career today, let alone what that career is going to be like in 10 years' time. Yeah. So where does that leave you with career decisions? It perhaps makes life a little bit easier because who knows what's going to happen in the future. So perhaps I would encourage you not to spend so much time worrying about it because things are likely to change. So I would encourage you to focus on developing skills, on knowing what kind of person you want to be, on making a difference to others, on developing yourself, on upskilling yourself, so that no matter what happens, you have the kind of mindset that would allow you to succeed. And no matter what the future brings, you will have some generic skills that you can flex and you can move, and you'll be in a position where you're developed and you're well trained, you're experienced, you're a likable colleague. So no matter what happens, you're going to be in a position to either take opportunity of any new careers that come up, or if things change, then at least you'll have the kind of mindset, you're going to have the relationships and the skills that allow you to flex and move in a different direction. Yeah. So it's easy to get paralyzed about the future. The reality is that, who knows what the future is going to bring. So maybe the focus needs to be on the relationships, the general skills, the difference that you're making. And that means that no matter what the future brings, you'll be in a position where you can take advantage of whatever happens in the future. Now, what we've also talked about today so far has been this idea of planning and implementing your career. So the exercises in the current stage and the vision for the future have been very much about knowing yourself, that kind of introspection. You look inwards, you reflect, you look at what you enjoy, you look at who you are, what kind of person you are. And on the basis of that, you produced 5 to 10 things that you want in your ideal future. And then you've used that list to rank your potential careers, your potential ways forward from there onwards. The problem is that at some stage, sooner or later, you've just got to have a go. Because remember, you can't possibly know everything about career today, let alone in the future. So no matter how much reading you do, no matter how much introspection you do, you're not going to be able to know everything about the career until you actually have a go. So at some stage, yes, it's great that these are the 5-10 things that I want in my future. It's great that you've made some choices about where you might want to go. Perhaps, you have 2 or 3 things that you want to explore. But at some stage, you've just got to go out there and you've just got to try it. And that means trying on that new identity. So if I were to have this, this direction A, what kind of books would I be reading? Which conferences would I be going to? What kind of people would I be mixing with? Which website would I hang out? How would I think? What kind of patients would I interact with? And then try and put on that new identity. Imagine yourself in that role. Maybe do some tasters if you can as well, yeah. But even if you can't do tasters, read around it, hang out on the various websites, LinkedIn group, whatever the career is, go to conferences related to that specialty and just try that on and say, how does this identity fit? And then you can learn from that, because you probably won't find that the first thing that you pick is going to be perfect, but you might say, actually, these bits really suit me. This is like me. These people are like me. I'm loving these things. And then other bits are not going to be like you. So, you learn from that and say, okay, well, I now know a little bit more. I know that these are the things I like and these are things I don't like. And then you try something else and you move in a different direction. Yeah. So that introspection that you've done during the current stage and vision for the future, that's important, because you've produced that list of, 5 to 10 things that you want in the future, and hopefully that's helped your decision making. But at some stage, you've just got to go out there. Yeah, you've got to have a go. You've got to surround yourself, immerse yourself in the new world, try on that new identity and learn and see what happens. Here are some of my tips for making decisions. The first thing would be to differentiate big from small decisions. And, big and small decisions, that means different things to different people. So, for me, I might say, choosing a specialty, majority of the time, that's probably not going to be a big decision, actually. Sort of, if you are trying to choose your own specialty, it might feel like it's a big decision. But, I would say, well, you're going to be a doctor one way or another. The big decision maybe was that you're going to be a doctor. But which specialty do you do? Is that really a big decision? It may be for you. For me, probably it wouldn't have been. Yeah, and maybe that's me talking about my values. Your values will be different. But maybe there might be some big decisions around, do I want to work in a hospital? Or do I want to work in general practice? That might be a bigger decision. Do I want to do lots of out-of-hours work versus do I want to do something that's largely 9 to 5? That might be a big decision, yeah? Do you do gastroenterology versus colorectal surgery? I don't know. Is that a big decision for you? You will be the only person that's going to know, yeah? But you need to differentiate. Is this a big decision? Is this a small decision? What's your ultimate aim? Yeah, I've talked about that. So yes, it's important to enjoy the present moment. Equally, it's important to know where your career is going. Yeah. Who's making those decisions for you? Now, hopefully, if you've done the current stage and the vision for the future, you will be the person that's driving, because you will have spent some time thinking about what it is that you want, and hopefully you will have tried on some of those new identities as well. But don't get caught up when people around you are pushing you to make decisions. You know, your head of department is pushing you to do a PhD or go down a certain role, or family members are pressuring you. Yeah. What's the first small step that you can take? You know, obviously making a career decision, you know, that might be a big step, and you might think, this is just overwhelming, I don't even know where to start. Yeah. So don't get paralyzed by trying to make a massive big decision and trying to make a massive step. Just think, what's a very, very small step that you can do, and it's going to move you towards that. So, and you know, life is a series of small steps. Yeah. So don't worry about trying to make a massive step. You know, just think about a small step that you can aim. Don't aim for perfection. Have a go, see what happens, learn, be flexible, and adjust. Yeah. Accept that yes and no are two sides of the same coin, because if you are saying yes to one career, that means that you're saying no to something else. Yeah. And you know, and that comes up really, really often, and people get paralyzed by that because they say, well, you know, there's these two things and they're incompatible. Well, you know, much life is like that. Yeah. If you go in one direction, you know, that means that another direction closes. Yeah. Of course, there's always a good question to ask, which is, you know, how can you have both? And you might be able to figure out a way forwards when you can have both of those at the same time. Or you might be able to figure out a way forwards where you can have both of those, but sequentially. So I'm going to do this for 5 years, and then I'm going to do something else for 5 years. So you can have two things that might be incompatible sequentially. Yeah. But often it's simply not possible. You have to make a decision, and you have to accept that. Who can help you decide? Yeah. So who are you going to talk to that's going to help you make a decision? And then how you will decide. And I've spent in this presentation, much of that was talking about how you actually make a decision yourself. So that brings us to the end of the choose stage. So if we recap where we started, so we started off with some exercises that told you about what's going on for the currently. You've done some exercises about what you want in the future, and out of that you first of all produces a list of 50 different things, and then you distill them down to maybe 5 to 10 things that you absolutely must have in the future. That's your desired list. And then maybe you use that list to brainstorm some ideas, or maybe you had some ideas already, and then we talked in this presentation about how you actually make that decision, remembering that introspective moment, that's all very well, but at some stage you've just got to go out there, you've got to try on a new identity, you've got to immerse yourself in a new environment. Don't aim for perfection, just do small things, learn, be flexible, and adjust.